This is going to be episode 35 of An Untold Narrative featuring Jeremy Green, most well known probably for Calling All Creators, which is an online platform of connecting and building community around footwear design specifically, or at least that's my understanding, and that's pretty much how we got connected. How would you give yourself an elevator pitch?
That's a great question. I mean, I guess it depends on like what era you caught me in. I feel like I've sort of like recreated myself a few times. But like who I am personally, geez, I don't know if I've ever even asked myself that question. I mean, definitely a creator for sure. And I sort of have dabbled in tech and design and obviously footwear and sportswear with Calling All Creators. But to be honest, I mean, I didn't go to school for sneaker design. My story, I'm originally from Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona. Grew up, just in the desert, to be honest, like as a desert boy. Love footwear, obviously, was part of that culture, played basketball. Like that's been like my life, to be honest. And it sort of informed me both on and off the court, but actually went to school for architecture. So architecture was my design background. I did not get my degree in architecture, but I quickly pivoted. So I went to Arizona State University and actually pivoted to a brand new degree program, which was at the School of Sustainability. So I always grew up sort of in a green space, was heavily influenced by just things that were happening like San Francisco in regards to like recycling and more so like just higher level like city planning and urban dynamics. So actually got my degree in sustainability with a sort of a dual focus or interdisciplinary focus in urban dynamics and in business. Had no fucking clue what I was going to do outside of school. And everyone around me was, they were working at Dell or interning at Dell and like doing all these really cool things. So I actually moved to the UK and just decided that I was going to be a writer, which right. Depends on what era you know me as. And
You weren't kidding when you opened up with that. Like that is
yeah.
I mean, we haven't even gotten into all of it, and that's a very tough way to summarize a 30-second elevator pitch.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. That's where you currently are. You mentioned to me offline, kind of pretty much visiting. You do reside in New York City, though, right?
Yeah, Brooklyn, Crown Heights. Yep.
Cool. So talk about like, you mentioned you are a creative. You mentioned you went to school for architecture. Like what type of childhood did you have? Like, were you always creative? Were you ever drawing? Were you just like in art classes, or were you just like run of the mill student, or were you like talk about kind of your childhood a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, I won't say I was all over the place. I mean, one thing I do appreciate about my mother specifically, she always wanted the best school system for us. So like where we were at specifically wasn't necessarily the best school district. So we kind of, crossed the lines, if you will, with like my grandparents were at, with just better school systems. So I was an avid reader. I don't know if, my followers or anyone really remembers, but Pizza Hut, and I can't remember the actual program, but it was like if you read 100 books, you get free pizza, like a free personalized pizza, like or one every day for a year.
What?
And like yeah, it was like this crazy program in the 90s, and I was like one of like 10 students that did it in like the whole country. So a lot of people like fabricated and they just gave everyone like a coupon, but they sent me literally, because my teachers could verify it, a stack, kid you not, of coupons for a personal size Pizza Hut pizza.
For the people listening on Spotify or Apple or wherever and not watching on YouTube right now, my like jaw just like fucking hit the floor. you got free pizzas for a year?
Yeah, so the caveat was you had to read 100 books in the summer. Yeah, so like that level of book, like, whatever the second graders reading in the 90s, like I read 100 of those. And like my teachers and both my parents were able to verify it. And like they sent me legitimately like a coupon book of just free personalized pizzas or personal sized pizzas.
Did you use all of the book or the coupons?
Yes. Yeah. So I mean, we kind of made it to like family night, like Friday night, because it wasn't like you had to use it on that day, right? Like we just go and like everyone. I mean, this was like the 90s pizza.
Yes, you could get away with shit like that.
Exactly. But also like it was like a sizzler. We had like the salad bar and shit. Like it was just a
That's
different Pizza Hut. Yeah.
That's so cool that you had to
Yeah.
you got to experience it just for reading 100. I mean, 100 books is wild, right? Like, let's not
Right.
dismiss
Yeah.
that. Let's not dismiss that. But, like, you're just taking your family out to eat every Friday. I mean, that's such a cool thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it kind of informed me becoming like, the sort of self-proclaimed leader because I'm like, I'm like feeding my family at, I don't know, 7 years
Second,
old.
second.
Like, yeah, it was wild, bro. I still talk about it to this day. And like, I don't know, it's weird just being, I don't know, like in that space. And like, also Pizza Huts don't exist anymore. So like, or at least like that version of it. Like,
Totally. That's a cool story. I've never heard something like that on this podcast, so I appreciate you.
of course.
So it sounds like you were always figuring out new ways to kind of get ahead.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was just a learner, bro. Like I love to learn. Like I did really well in school. Like I was also like a mathlete, like fourth, fifth, sixth grade. So like just learning was my thing. And like, my pops, he valued technology. So we had like, early apples, like the green screen joints. And like, I play solitaire, like I played games, but he also had like early versions of CAD on that. And, I would legitimately, I was maybe 9 or 10 or 11 at the time, but I would design houses then. And that's what, sort of wanted me to, or floor plans, not like houses. Like,
No, I
yeah, it
know,
was
but
no
like
3D program.
you're learning CAD at such a young age, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah, and
why.
that was like, I wanted to be an architect. And when I went into school, it's different time, different industry, but I just knew that I wanted to build things. And like, I would always take apart like electronics, like we had RC cars and just different things. And, the engineer in me like started to come out of like, hey, like, how does this thing actually work? You know what I mean? Like, it seems cool and looks dope, but like, how does it work? And like, how do you build it? So yeah, like that really like informed sort of a lot of like how I found my way in the world like as an adult.
That's incredible. Yeah, to be able to discover and go to that level of product understanding, like remaking or rebuilding things, it's super unique. I mean, it's like you get the classic, like, oh, we play with Legos, or I was drawing my sketchbook all the time, but like
Mhm.
doing CAD work is like at a 10, 11, 12 years old is a different level.
Yeah, yeah, and for me it was just a game. I was just like, all right, like I'm gonna, because also like my parents at the time were looking for a new house, so they'd bring home floor plans. In my mind, I'm just gonna recreate the floor plan, right? Like, boom, take this, draw my little measurements, do my translations. Like that was just like my thing of just like reverse engineering, I guess.
That's really fun. And then you said, so you went to school for architecture, but you didn't get a degree
Mhm.
in architecture. So what?
Yep.
Well, and then you talk about that process of like, why did you end up not completing it?
Yeah, yeah. So I went to preface say I went to two different schools. So my freshman year, like I said, I'm originally from Arizona, but my freshman year I went to Bowling Green State in Ohio.
Mhm.
Much different environment. Like this is the furthest I had been at this time out east. Literally knew no one there. Like I would say my mom kind of tricked me, but I got a full ride scholarship, and she's like, "Hey, like let's go check it out," right? But it was like I kid you not, like literally like a week before classes started. So like, sort of the decision was like, this is where you're going. Yeah. Because for her, she also wanted me to like get out of like my comfort zone. And then that's what I like appreciate about like, just like my upbringing is like she pushed me in that way. Um, so I went there, and they had a very, very traditional architecture program. And I can't remember the like the dean or the head professor, but he was definitely an Asian man, and like he was a drafter, like he was a legit drafter, and like that was the first time I really got to like see that side of it. Coming up with like technology and all that, like CAD was sort of like my understanding of that. And I had taken a drafting class, like a sort of vocational class in high school, but very little was like on the technical drafting. So I was able to learn that and to be able to craft like 3D models, from cork board and styrofoam board and these things. So I appreciated that. And to be honest, I just got homesick. I got homesick and um, moved back to ASU, or moved back to Arizona and went to ASU. Um, but they're much more competitive program, more tech driven or more digital driven. And while my grades were up, my designs weren't like quite up to speed because everyone was, 1 year into CAD, and I was like actually learning CAD at that time, like, or the actual CAD program. So I was kind of forced out of the program, and I could have done something different, like more. A lot of my people went to GIS, if you're familiar, Global Information Systems, which is essentially just like city planning, like traditional city planning. Um, but the School of Sustainability literally was like right next to the design school. It was this brand new program, and they had everything. It was bachelor's, master's, and PhD program. So like instantly, I was in a class of like a global community, like folks
Wow.
from Asia, folks from Europe, like all over the world. The professors were like, executives at Dell, they were executives at Tesla, like all of these cool companies. So like for me, it was about the actual like sustainability and the green part. I had no idea like it would lead me to where I am today.
For context, like what
Mhm.
years did you go to college?
Yeah, so I graduated 2006. So BGSU was 2006, 7. And then I took just the next semester off for ASU. I took a couple classes at community college, but I was at ASU, I think fall or spring of '08. Yeah.
But the reason why I ask is like
Mhm.
today sustainability is cool.
Right,
Today people
right,
talk about
right.
sustainability. 2008, nobody cared about sustainability,
Yeah,
not to
yeah.
the
No one
level of
gave a
degree that
shit
we do
about
today.
it.
So that's a very like I don't know pro. uh, You had incredible like foresight of like, hey, like this is something that I don't really know too much about, but I'm interested in it.
Yeah.
Maybe I could do something with it.
I would like to say it was that well thought. It was just the easiest path to graduation. Like from where I was sitting, right? Like I had these certain credits, and like I sat down. Oh, does
I
this
got you.
you still got me? Oh, okay, yeah, it kind of did something weird. But like I sat down with my counselor, which I also appreciate Black man. Like he was just gave it to me straight. It was like, this is what you need to do. So I got that program, and I kind of changed my degree through sustainability, or like once you get to like year 3 and year 4, like you kind of choose like a track because it was very well thought out. Like there was policy and governance, there was business, there was like traditional sustainability, like renewable energies. But I took a class in all of those tracks and then sort of found like my way to like piece it together, which I appreciate because it was very much. And ASU is kind of built that way. It's sort of like an interdisciplinary school, and like they're up there with Harvard and MIT as far as like innovation with their programs. So yeah, definitely was not that well thought out though. Like it was just like, all right, cool. Like this is how I graduate. Got
I was like, man, he's like way ahead of his time, and you're just like, I
it.
appreciate the candor and you just being like, no, it was actually like I just needed something to do.
Yeah, yeah.
So
They're
what
just
did
like, all right, cool. Like,
you kind of piecemealed like it all together, like, and so
mhm.
what like final like what did you get your degree officially like kind of in, or what route did you go after?
Yeah, so it was. I mean, like I said, you get it to a point where it's either BA or BS, like depending on which side you want to go to, and then like you sort of choose a track. And a lot of people chose one, but because I had credits from BGSU, because I had credits from the community college, and also took some courses in high school, like I was like, okay, like I can sort of segment this out. So I sort of got like a dual major, not necessarily like it's just my BA is sustainability, but my focuses are urban dynamics and business.
Cool. I don't
So
even
yeah,
like
like all the
you said you mentioned it a little bit earlier in the conversation. You
mhm.
mentioned urban dynamics. First time I ever heard those two words put together.
Yeah,
I don't even know what that
it's
means.
city planning, but it was sort of their version of city planning because like the way I see it is like city planning is just like all right, like water systems, transportation, housing, right, and food systems and like your basic stuff. With what we did, and actually our senior capstone, not mine, we created a multi-use building, which was sort of not unheard of, but like was rare around Arizona. And we had just got our first like real like public transit system, the light rail. So like our capstone literally was pitching the city of Phoenix on this program, which it's erected today, but it's just a multi-use building of just like, hey, you should have residential, commercial in the same
Super
space,
cool.
like which is yeah.
That's awesome. So what after you graduated in what, 09 or 10, and then what did you do after
Yeah.
your degree?
Yep. So graduated actually the fall of 11 because I was taking summer classes throughout and kind of catching up in some other areas to graduate. But 2012, like I said, moved to London. A buddy of mine had just moved there, and I had no idea what I was going to do. I had no like internships lined up. Like all of my, colleagues were just like set because they knew people in the industry and they were doing a lot of like that sort of networking. And I legitimately told my mom, I mean, my whole family, I'm like, I'm going to London to be a writer. And I read a bunch that summer. This was also the Olympics 2012, so I got to experience that, which is pretty cool.
Wow.
And I won't say quickly moved back, but by the end of the year, had moved back and sort of started like my life. Thankfully, because I knew people, I was able to work for Tesla or one of their, at the time it was a subsidiary, but it's now what's known as Tesla Energy. So it was on the renewable side.
But so you went to London for a year, sub a year, just to become a writer, but you never became a writer.
Not yet.
I didn't want to blow over that statement. Right? You're like, I'm going to London to be a writer, and then he goes to London, he comes back at the end of the year, and he never talks about becoming a writer.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was a process for sure.
So what did you
It was
what did you do for the year in London?
Fucked around mostly. I mean, I wrote for sure, but a lot of reading, a lot of just like really just experiencing, like living life. That college experience was like it was intense, to be honest. Like that degree program was treated much like a master's program, and like I would say by design, but they were literally creating like future leaders for the world, and like it's already hard enough to ask at like 18 to say like, hey, what do you want to be in the world? Like, but then let alone like, 20, 21, whatever age I was at that time, just like, okay, like, what do you want to be in like the world now that you have like an actual understanding of it, right? Like, so it was a lot of pressure. So I just kind of ran away in a sense, but yeah, I mean, found myself in a way as well, but came back and struggled for a while to like find a job, but started working for Nike retail and Solar City was the actual name, but Tesla Energy at the same time. And I just like hustled just to work and gain experience.
So the Tesla Energy or solar, whatever it was called, was really an outlet to utilize the degree, it sounds like, in some way.
Yeah, I mean, it was the end for sure. I'll say the degree had little merit in that space because it was such a new idea. So everyone obviously understands Tesla automotive, the cars, but without sharing too much of like Elon's sort of master plan, it's a logistics company, and so SpaceX and really everything that he does is logistics and specifically vertically integrating logistics. So while the cars were one piece, my job was in the marketing side and marketing in both like kind of loosely product manager in a sense, to where we sold solar. That was our main function, but really our job was to understand solar energy better for the sake of automotive. So I mean, even in your area, like all around Worcester, like I'm kind of getting ahead of like the story, but I that's what got me out east. I worked here, and obviously it makes a lot of sense here in Arizona, but really built infrastructure, built a team at a very, very young age. And they offered me like a higher level management position out in the Northeast. And I had, so I moved to Connecticut, but I had Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, and Vermont were like my greater like region. And like
Holy cow! After how many years were you working there that they offered you this?
One. So that's, I think, where the degree kind of, they're like, hey, like you're smart, like you get it, like, because like I said, the main function, people are like energy, right? Let me sell solar, but like I quickly understood just like the greater idea. Don't mind the noise, my sister's getting
you're
refrigerator delivered.
But where in Connecticut was it based out of?
So I moved to when I first moved, I moved to West Hartford, and I kind of settled like downtown Hartford. But our office was in, geez, what's the name of that town? I don't even know if I remember it
For
now.
the people watching
But it was
for the people watching on YouTube, there's a legitimate free refrigerator going behind him right now.
yeah, like new house woes. um, Jeez,
You
Rocky
know,
Hill. That's
no,
the name of it. Rocky
the,
Hill, Connecticut.
the reason why I asked was like I was raised in Connecticut, about
Oh
20
yeah.
minutes 20 minutes west of North Hartford. So
Okay. What
yeah,
town?
Wolcott.
Okay. I don't know
It's
if
next
I'm
to Waterbury.
familiar. I know Waterbury for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, we did a lot of business in Waterbury. Yeah, bro. I put so many miles, and
I
I was
bet.
all around the Northeast. Like, yeah, like
So were you
Albany one
like
day.
cold calling different accounts to go sell solar?
So I mean, we had a bunch of different sources. So like originally, yes, like it was straight cold calling. Like we had like a door-to-door like sales team. But I was a part of like the retail, like the new like pilot retail program. So, and essentially they just want you to prove yourself. But I did so well here in Arizona. They're like management. So we had people inside like Tesla actual retail locations. The big catalyst was they had signed a new partnership with Home Depot and Best Buy. So we had folks like in there like set up. And that was like the team that I managed both like all three of those locations. And then we had like a separate like door to door like sales team. But yeah, they push solar, but really just pushing the understanding of solar. And we created like new products, so like things like the solar lease we had created. What I was a part of was the solar roof, and that was like my real introduction to like product design or like product development and product management. And it literally just came from background on school or
You're good. Yeah, you're fine.
okay. um, but we had like literally it came from an idea, and this is where sort of the larger idea that calling all creators came from is one of our customers, not one of mine, but like one of our customers had really just come up with the idea like, hey, and he was an engineer, like what if we made the actual panels on or the shingles on a roof out of solar. And like what I do appreciate about Tesla's, they put the R&D behind it, and eventually it did come out. It is still quite expensive, but the technology was there, and the ability to make it was there, to where like even further, like you can just go even deeper down that rabbit hole, right? I mean,
Sure.
just literally taking 3 by 5 foot solar panel and condensing it to the size of a MacBook, and then just getting even smaller and smaller. So that was sort of like not my gift, but like I was a part of like that pilot program, and really like championed it on the East Coast because they were a San Francisco based company.
Right.
Um, and we were really the people to kind of validate it and make it real. Like it wasn't as great for folks in our area, but as you can imagine, Southwest and California, it's perfect.
This is so. I had no idea that you had any sort of experience in this world, and you literally talked about it as like different chapters in your life of like these majorly different experiences.
So the crazy thing is, during all that, I self-published 2 poetry books.
Did you really?
Yes,
So you became a writer?
I did. I did. I did. It took a while, but I did.
So he finally makes it. He's working for Tesla. He's building out solar panels and writing poetry.
Duality.
I
Like,
guess so. I guess so. So like how
yeah.
long
Well,
were you at this roller job, and then how did you transition to the next thing? Or obviously this, it sounds like you were doing this 2014, 15, 16. I don't know, maybe you could scope out time.
yeah. Yeah, 13 through 17 actually. So it was a 4-year run. Basically got all of my equity that I got, as I first signed, and that was by design. But I don't say I knew too much, but for me, me being a black man, like in these spaces, like the writing was on the wall. Like they were promoting folks to like higher level director positions, and like just the sort of side comments of like, hey, like clean up like your image, and like your hair is too this. And I didn't even have locks at the time. Like I just had like the Jay-Z, like the early Jay-Z like high top joint. And like, it just, that's just the reality in those spaces is people look at you, and being young, of course, like adds to that, but like being young, and almost in a way, like at least in that space, like being too successful. Like my team in my region, 2 years running was like the best in the company. Like I met
Oh,
Elon once or twice, yeah, or
that's
twice, one in
amazing,
Penn too.
dude.
But
You should be super proud of yourself for that.
oh, I am. But it
Okay.
didn't really hit me until like afterwards, because when you're in it, like you're not really like appreciated, and like, they gift me with stuff. Like they bought me Apple Watches and stuff. Because it was like, those are like, gifts really. It was like, yeah, I'm trying to like build my career.
Yeah.
And
And you
so
basically just reached a peak of like, hey, like this clear, like they clearly don't want me to keep accelerating at the speed I'm going.
well, I mean, it was a number of things. So it was that plus they were actually, and this was I said, I knew too much at the time. I knew that they were going to be incorporated back into Tesla. So I knew like just changes overall, like, you kind of see it for what it is. And, it was a great experience. Like, I don't want to like salt the name of Tesla or Elon or any of that. Like, it was an amazing experience that taught me entrepreneurship. It taught me leadership. It just taught me everything that I am today, working with different people, personalities, like all of it. But, you just understand that you're one person, like literally a number within a corporation. And like that corporation has a larger goal that they're trying to achieve. And not that I was holding them back, like they were actually holding me back from getting to where I wanted to go. So I had a lot of support, and I worked so much that I literally had like 3 months worth of vacation. And I took all of that time and literally just figured out what I was going to do next.
And so you hinted at it a little bit earlier of like that you had the idea of calling all creators while you were working
Mm.
on this. Is that kind of what stimulated that idea during this 3-month vacation?
Yeah. So what's in sorry to jump around the story. What was intentional about joining Tesla, and specifically that arm of it, was I felt I needed to learn better like sales and marketing. So my counselor, like, and this is like our final discussion, I'm just like, I don't know what the hell I'm gonna do. Like, and this is even before I made the decision to like go to England. And like I said, him being a black man, he's like, listen, the reality is you don't want to work for anyone, but the reality is you have to work for someone because you don't have any experience, and like you don't have the resources, right, to just go out and start a business. So you need to learn business, like real world business, like economics and strategy and all these stuff in a controlled environment in school is fine, but it's not the real world. So um, with that, I knew, and I'd actually developed an idea for a footwear brand, and at the time, Tom's is really like the major player in like the sustainable footwear space. Um, I developed in just early sketches of just like an idea of like using just like different hemp textiles and like cork rubbers and things like this, or just different materials that were just better for the environment, like even more so than what Tom's was doing. Like they weren't even looking into materials at the time. It was just like, hey, we're doing for good by giving a pair of shoes to underserved communities. So I started that, and like I said, the reality was I'd done my research and reached out to a couple like consultants. It was like 75,000, we can help you. Like I don't have 75,000. I just spent $75,000 on my degree. So um, you told me that as a freshman, like maybe we had a different conversation. But um, so so basically that led me to say, okay, like I want to get back into like sort of my passion of like footwear, but more from a design perspective. And to be honest, like started calling out creators as like a side project. In my working with Tesla, I really figured out tools. So Salesforce was even sort of new at the time,
Hmm.
and I was like very, very good at it. And so a buddy of mine, or like a buddy of mine, his buddy, was starting a startup in the city. And at the time, I was in Harlem. Had moved to Harlem from Connecticut. So I started helping them out just with like Salesforce, and like it was actually like a Salesforce startup, and he actually got acquired eventually. But I just sort of helped him out just because I knew the platform and knew it like quite well. From a sales perspective and like sales and marketing, but just like from understanding the actual platform. But starting calling out creators, one of those like early 3 a.m. like creative nights, and like for me, it was just a project. Just like, I'm gonna see what this is, and if it has legs. And like instantly, like I kid you not, like the next morning, Mark Dolce is like, "Who is this?" And like, who started this?
So
So like,
talk about for the listeners who don't know, who you know, whomever's listening who doesn't understand what Calling All Creators was. What talk about first? What was the original idea behind it? Like, what was your mission and goal, and then what is it today?
so I don't, and like I said, I don't know that I had a mission. Like, well, I guess the mission was to sort of like highlight specifically Adidas like footwear design or product design. And obviously footwear is a big piece of that. So I just started building up a library of all those assets that were just online on IG. And just started sharing them. Like I knew like a photographer, like a like copywriter, and like, you know, I had a few people within the network. Um, but for me, and I don't know that this was necessarily the mission like from jump, but it was just to create community around those things. Because what I did understand about all the challenges that we had with Tesla is it's not this sort of idea of if you build it, they will come. It's like you should probably have consumers and customers, or at least a community watching before you release product.
Sure.
So that part was intentional, and it was sort of like a case study, really, for me to like introduce like my own footwear brand. But in all of that, like it just developed into creating this amazing community of just like footwear designers. I mean, this greater idea of like creators, right? I know it's sort of like been co-opted by like purely like content creators, but industrial designers, makers, tinkers, crafters, like sketchers, like you name it, like, you know, we want to represent them. So it's just been an amazing experience, like just seeing the platform develop, seeing creators develop, like
I was
being
gonna
able to like
say,
connect.
isn't it so amazing like what a platform like Instagram can do for somebody? And like this is just like an
Yeah,
infancy idea that you said at 3 a.m. it sprouted, and like the next day, like talk. Oh, I didn't want to dismiss the fact that you said like Mark Dolce's in my DMs the next day of like who is this?
yeah.
Like,
Yeah, so I mean, for those,
so is Adidas part of it, or is it solely owned by you? Like talk about like how is it, how is it a business? Question mark.
yeah. um so it is solely owned, or you know, let's say collectively owned now. So obviously folks remember like the sort of call to action, or the hiring call to action that Adidas had. A lot of the energy that we created turned it into a longer scale campaign, and really sort of evolving this idea of creator, where they even injected athlete where I wasn't necessarily like looking there. um, but they created, you know, obviously with their you know, the resources, was able to create a larger narrative around it. But for us, it was never official, but we worked on essentially research projects for them. So they gave us the Adidas archive, and essentially said, hey, like, let your community create this. So there's various like projects that we've touched like throughout the years, and whether like purely from like content creation, or like sort of community building, like 747 warehouse, and just creating additional energy, or other things where we sort of led up to, which was sort of my theory, was creating this global design team that had literally nothing to do with the brand per se, but we're creating products for the brand. And it's wild to even see like how NFTs have sort of like naturally found their way there. But our, you know, our involvement was purely like R&D, because it was essentially just me like in that space, and sort of like, you know, the CAC team. And I'll say, had I known what I know now, I felt like those 4 years I needed to kind of, you know, to muscle through my myself, like much like Tesla, and really just figure out like what actual entrepreneurship is. Because while I felt like I learned certain things at Tesla, I still always had, you know, their resources to back me up. I had an HR team, I had like a traditional marketing team, like I had a team that reported to me that I can actually pay, versus like me just trying to figure out like how to build a business from nothing. Right.
So I remember when Adidas went all in on the calling all. I mean, it was on commercials on like your normal TV stations. It was wild.
Yep.
It was huge,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
that was sprouted pretty much from the platform.
Not solely. I mean, for sure. Like it was a part of like their larger scale, like, you know, their like 2-3 year run. But we created the energy behind it, like the community behind it. Like, you know, having a 7.2 and Sunny like at your disposal to create a you know, a spot, and an ad spot is amazing. but that only captures consumers, right? What I considered our community and still do is prosumers. Like we consume and we appreciate the culture and the products that these brands are putting out. The difference is though we can lend a healthy perspective to the progression of that product. So even our first really introduction to that was the Hardened Volume 2, and just understanding that from a higher level, not higher level, but just from a consumer standpoint, like it just wasn't what the brand thought it was going to be. It didn't land like people thought it would. And, it's just like, hey, what if it looked different, right? And that was just sort of the idea, the question that we that we put out. But what could it look like? And the value was the community was able to do that in real time. And I can't remember how many actual concepts we got back, but it was like, I mean, there's still a hashtag for it. But it was like something like 50 or 60 different concepts that then Adidas could use as a library to inform the future of that line. So, like I said, purely R&D in that sense, but a lot of different layers in that I'm like sort of not say discovering now, but just putting into like proper like operation now.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's pretty much going direct to the consumer. And I love the term, you call them prosumers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's really, I'm totally going to steal that, by the way.
Yeah. Well, it's not my Clay Shirky is actually the originator of it. So he's like sort of the godfather of like open source.
Okay.
So a lot of my theories actually draw from like actual like technology and like agile, product development. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's so interesting. Like not only somebody who, like that's totally me. Like I purchase a product, but I also love the product for the things that it's built around and what it does, but then to a higher degree, the culture around it and the people it influences.
Yep.
That's incredible. I love that.
Yeah.
And so like how you said you started in 2017, like when did it become a business? Or when did like were you able to monetize it? Or like what else were you doing? Was this like this couldn't have been your only job, or was it?
No. I mean, it was definitely side project. I mean, side project, but like building up to. I mean, even where we're at now, and these things just take time, to be honest. And like, um, so I was doing a bunch of different freelancing, different creative work. Like I'm a photographer, like I've done copywriting, like just a bunch of different creative work. And then even obviously using like the platform as a way to introduce like myself for different freelance work. So basically, I mean, the Adidas thing, like we never really got paid for that work, but it was a great experience. Like, don't get me wrong. Was able to connect with a global community of like high level executives and like basketball and just folks that have just always been in support of what we're doing. So while it wasn't like a monetary value, like, the network value was infinite. So that turned into, which actually, whom I introduced you to, David Ginsler. So he, maybe let him share his story, but he's, one of the originators of sort of this, product design, like open source ideology. So he has since become a mentor, but he introduced ISPO to me, and I had no idea what it was. And, outdoor and nature was really sort of my thing. But being able to kind of merge those two worlds was amazing, including calling all creators. So that was really sort of our introduction beyond Adidas. And while it didn't really turn into, it did, but I'll get to like what that was. Just us being able to introduce like the brand and the community to a global audience was dope, and more specifically introduce creators to a lot of these big brands on a global scale, in a real way. Like, hey, this is a physical prototype from someone in Italy, right? And like run with this. So so we do have a lot of like that value there, but that turned into us actually working with I guess I could say it now, Etonic. So the Etonic.
Oh, E-Tonic. Okay.
Yeah. So for anyone that doesn't know, they quite literally were the first footwear brand in America. They started making World War I boots, and like kind of moved into at the time was golf. I found herself into running, but they were the first like footwear brand in America.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That's a cool
Yeah.
story.
Yeah. And so, well, it's unfortunate because at this time, this was 2019. So Adidas ended 2018. We did ISPO 2018 summer. And then moving into 2019. So Etonic is still in operations, but they're exclusively in Asia. And around, this is like pre sort of, or at least, US COVID or like the global like pandemic. But they're experiencing certain things. So operations just kind of fell through. But we are really going to test our theory on a global scale. So our task was to introduce that brand to both the American and European market through the lens of our creators or our prosumers in those markets. And a lot of that information is even still available now, like through a hashtag, but like, it's unfortunate that it fell through, but it was us being able to like really do it in a real way where like Adidas, not to say they wouldn't let us, like it was never like a direct ask, but Etonic was just so new that they're kind of like, hey, like, we'll let an agency sort of run it and own it. So,
So you have this opportunity with Etonic, and you're
mhm.
wrapping up Adidas. How else are you getting involved? Like, what else are you just working all these? I mean, you rifled off. Again, it's like, not to dismiss these things. It's like, I was doing some photography, I was doing some editing, I was doing some this, I was doing some that. Like, is this your entire life? Are you just always doing 7 different things at the same time?
um, Well, less these days, but unfortunately at that time, yes, because it's New York, but like it's a hustler state. Like you have to get it right. So like I was whatever I needed to do, like I did, while also like having conversations with like various brands and like just trying to inject not even just the community but the system that is calling out creators. But um, I am thankful for COVID in the sense that it allowed me and even brands to sort of slow down and say, okay, like what is here. So really, all of last year has been spent putting a lot of operational things in place, having amazing conversations with brands, and like thankfully because of COVID, in that sense, like they've also recognized, like, hey, we have to look at our consumers differently, right? They're a lot smarter than they, not that they thought or anticipated. Like they just will realize that they're a lot more educated and aware than what a brief had shown, previously. So in that sense, like all of those things have been in place and we're literally building up to like this larger idea that is calling our creators not only just as a brand, as an agency, but as like as a business. So a lot of those things like you'll see within the next coming months, like it's been sort of quiet like on social. And, I mean, we're starting to come back now. But things like the air innovation like we did last year and really just testing theories. And again, thankfully for stuff like NFTs, like we can explore different ways to monetize it, right? Versus like trying to get a brand's budget or trying to get a brand's approval to do a thing. Now it's like, hey, we can still do our thing and now we can sell it back to you. Or now we can talk, more seriously about like budget wise because we own the thing or we own the IP versus just putting out there in the universe and like brand saying, hey, we like this, add it to a mood board, and then just keep it moving without ever like a consideration or even, I mean, much worse, a conversation.
Yeah,
Like,
I was gonna bring up it. It did seem like you like went ghost on social for a
yeah.
while, and it sounds like you were just restructuring, rebuilding, reformatting. And today, use the term. It is an official like consultancy and or agency, right?
Yeah. So that's, I mean, we're still like working through a lot of that stuff, but doing a lot of campaigning behind the scenes as far as like fundraising, and really just legitimizing it. And like I said, it's always been an LLC owned by me, but looking into like really incorporating into this larger idea of like an open source product design system.
Gotcha. So like,
Yeah.
that's exciting. I mean, I'm excited to see what's going to come in the next couple months, right? It
Yeah.
sounds like you've been building up for some really fun projects, and I'm always worried to deep dive just yet into NFTs because I don't know how many like people, listeners, and understand that world yet. I mean, I do, but I'm always
Mhm.
worried about that. But I'm excited to see what you're able to do in that space, and I think you're going to educate a lot of people as well. But
Yeah.
what are some like main future goals of yours? Like, do you? I love to ask this question if people like have a 5-year plan or think about
Mhm.
what they're going to do in the future. And I've used this line in the past episodes. It's like everybody had a 5-year plan until COVID slapped them in the face.
Yeah, yeah, uppercutted him actually.
So like, how do you live your life? Like, how are you, planning this? Like, or are you still taking it day by day?
Yeah, I mean, still day by day, but day by day, like brick by brick in that sense. Like, we're building the house. And, while like even I'd say within the last 90 days, like things have sort of like twisted and turned. I do feel as though like we've been on the right path. And like I said, COVID sort of shown that for us and that, hey, like we actually have a lot of value for brands. Now again, it's legitimizing. It's having like the operational pieces in place to make the thing work, versus like just me like being, the guy and the sole person. So it's been a lot of team building, with purpose, in playing. I mean, obviously in sportswear, footwear, but drawing this open source theory, and bringing in like my roots and what I feel like is necessary and I'd say should be, absolute at this point, but like a closed loop system. Like we have bigger problems to solve, and that's not just environmentally driven. Like the three pillars of my degree were society, environment, and economics. So like all of those things have a healthy play in this. And while brands are always economics, and that's how they define their success, like okay, like if 2020 showed us anything, right? Look at the underserved communities, look at how police brutality has informed even just a lot of the systems in a corporate structure. You know what I mean? Like not that they're necessarily killing people, but they're killing careers in that sense. So like just being able to examine those things from our lens and literally going to the source and saying, hey, creator, in this area, what's best for you? Like what do you need, right? And that's really the long-term goal, is serving creators and really being the catalyst and sort of discovery platform for independent brands and creators for a lot of these large brands.
That's amazing. It sounds like you're slow. Again, I love the term brick by brick, and instead of day by day. um, a brick might take more than a day, or maybe it's a week, maybe it's a couple of weeks.
Exactly.
But on a personal level, right, outside of calling all creators, like what do you plan for your own life? Like I also ask the question a lot of times of like, are you happy? Like, are you enjoying life? Like you got to be in your, if you graduated, in your early 30s, it sounds like I'm taking a guess here and you don't have to share, but like, are you enjoying life at this point in time?
Yeah. So I mean, be transparent. I look much younger than what I am. I'll be 33 this summer. And yeah, I mean, I won't say I'm happy in the sense of like, I'm comfortable and like content, but like I know the path, right? Like for me, like the steps are there and like it is me and I won't say me, but it's us charting our own path like in the industry. But personally, like it is for me by design, because one of the biggest things from Tesla and my days at Tesla was burnout. And the reason why I needed to take, a 3-month vacation to figure out what I wanted is because I was so blinded by that business and that industry, which is good. Like, it kept me comfortable and had me be able to be comfortable for a while, like after that, but like it wasn't sustainable. Like, just that sort of callback and like, okay, what's sustainability? So like even through, some of the tougher years of calling all creators, I learned Muay Thai, and picked up like a martial art. I mean, obviously for the physical side of it, but more for the spiritual side of it. And just being able to just have a balanced life. And while everyone was freaking out, like when COVID hit, like it was normal for me. Like we used Zoom back in 2018, or I'm sorry, 2013, 2015. And like that was just our normal business operation. So while people are still adjusting to that, I was like, oh yeah, this is easy. Like I was showing people how to actually use Zoom. Um, so in that sense, like definitely comfortable, like even, as you're getting all the background noise, like just being here, for my sister and being able to have that flexibility, like her first home, and just being able to help her out and kind of like break away from New York for a bit and just have just more of a balanced, way of life, which I think is sort of what 2020 taught us all. Like just, where do you place your values? Is it family? Is it environment? Is it home? Like what is your thing? So super thankful and grateful for that. But yeah, I mean, there's always, another thing to accomplish. Like for me, it's about process, and I think that's what I've leaned more into. It's just like, just the roots of design and leading up to like building a business is everything is a process. Like had I started calling all creators as a legitimate business back in, 2016, probably wouldn't have worked out the way that I thought it would, because I would have been more so about the money and let me get a client and let me do this versus like, all right, let me just make sure I'm fed personally doing various freelance work and actually like figure out what this thing is. Because the validation for me was Mark Dolce, right? I got recognized by Mark Dolce where I never had like a direct connection to someone like him. And like, okay, so I've got something here. Let me not just rush into this thing. And for me, it's proving and showing your value in a real way, and then that's when the money comes. And that's when a lot of the resources come, and specifically the experience resources, like the intangible that people don't really talk about. So you have to take losses and shit that just hits on the. There's a lot of noise here. Sorry. Um,
Yeah, this is definitely one of the more interesting episodes. I mean, I hope people are watching on YouTube when this launches, because you saw a refrigerator come in, but you also saw the same refrigerator go back out throughout the episode.
well, so the one that she had, the freezer wasn't working. So like, yeah, replacements.
Hey man,
Yeah,
I think
wild times.
that's you're spot on about 2020, right? Obviously, overall, I think take the deaths and the sickness aside, like I think a lot of
Mm,
people were able to look around their four walls and understand what was truly at the core valuable in life and where they
hmm
wanted to change and shift their mentality to build a better future. And I think
exactly.
a lot of people would follow your mentality and being able to appreciate more family time, being able to go
Yeah,
support your sister move, go being able to do these things while still
yeah,
being able to pay my bills, right? So
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
I think that's
And
awesome.
that's not for like the loss. Like I lost two uncles because of COVID. You know what I
Oh,
mean? And I
man.
think even, oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean,
Sorry about that.
it's one of those things where you realize those things matter. Where like not that I wasn't like constantly talking with them or anything like that, but it was just it just put those things into perspective. Like, hey, like these are life events. Especially for like my sister. Like, let me be physically there for her versus just like a phone call or a FaceTime like from Brooklyn. So.
Yeah. Um, what I was gonna. This is like one of the first times I had something on the tip of my tongue that I was gonna ask and then I forgot. Um, where do you like have like a official like website for calling all creators, or do people just mainly find you through the IG page?
Yeah, so it's the soft launch now. So it's just callingallcreators.co. It is live. Like I said, we're still working through a lot of the back end stuff. So it is going to change, but like you can go on there, you can essentially get a glimpse of like a snapshot of the IG, Project One, which was the Donovan Mitchell like pitch to Adidas is there, and that's at this point really just a case study. We still have to load up Project Two, which is Etonic, and then Project Three and Four, like we're still sort of working through now, but those will be sort of the business case studies. But yeah, you can definitely. It is live now, but it is going to change. Like we're literally like introducing a brand new brand identity. So
That's 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 amazing. Congratulations. This
thank you.
will probably launch in a few weeks from the recording time. And hopefully by then there's some really good content on both the website callingallcreators.co.
Mhm.
And then you could follow along on Calling All Creators Instagram.
Yep, yeah, just add calling all creators on Instagram. We've got a Twitter. It's kind of light, but it's call underscore all creators or call all creators. It's not calling. It's not the
We'll put it. I'll find the link and we'll plug it
yeah,
below.
yeah.
But hopefully, if you're somebody is employed by a brand or part of a brand, and it sounds like you're really here to elevate brands and do consumer trends research, case studies around the prosumer or the consumer and the people who
Mhm.
actually live in those worlds. Is that an accurate statement? That's what I'm gathering.
Yeah. I mean, we've defined it as like we're crafting, curating, and narrating product stories, but it's spot on. Like we're, like I said, doing the consumer research, actually putting like some R&D into it, and then hopefully like actually being able to release product, or not hopefully, we will be releasing product in the future. Yeah,
We will be releasing products. So
we will be.
we have something to look forward to, people.
Yes, yes.
That's awesome. If you last question, and then also before the last question, what's your last handle or your personal handle if you want to share it?
Yeah, so my personal is Jeremy M. Green on IG. I'll have a personal website up soon, just like all the various things that I've done. But yeah, you can find me there. LinkedIn is just Jeremy M. Green. It's pretty much there everywhere.
It
Like
sounds
all
like you need a
platforms.
personal website to really storytell all the different shit you've done, man.
It's coming. It's coming. Like I'm actually writing another book. It's funny. I actually had a talk with. Well, so that book actually may be a movie. I haven't actually written it yet. Yeah, I had an amazing talk with an advisor of mine. Actually, maybe a half hour, an hour before our chat, and yeah, so
But
soon come.
I was literally ready to wrap this up, and then you just drop a bomb.
just like,
You're,
oh,
you're,
that
you're, about,
was.
you're about to release a book, and or it may become a movie.
So I'll say I've only done the character development for the graphic novel, but in the talk that I just had, my advisor essentially is like he's in like the film space, and he essentially said, "Hey, like we want to tell underserved stories, so present underserved stories to me, and we can fund them." So
That is
my thinking is like, yeah,
crazy.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, but and that was just it happened literally in that conversation. Like he had no idea that I was writing any of this. So like, it's still obviously things to talk through, but like, he is offering that up to me. And originally I was like, maybe I should write this as a movie. But at any rate, like I do hope to have something put together by like next year. But just starting to just do more creative work and like with my friends, like, like my greater like friends, like personal stuff. Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, the personal website will definitely start to spell out a lot of that because I may actually produce a photography book as well, like just a small, maybe like a smaller zine. Well, the thing is, like when I did my poetry book, like it defined the process for me, right? So now, it's much like anything. Like once you do it once or twice, like all right, cool. Like I have an understanding of how to put it together, so it's not the first time you're doing it at that
I'm
point.
one of these days. I'm gonna definitely pick your brain about self-publishing.
Yeah,
In a different time.
yeah.
But that you are a man of many different trades. That is for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Um,
Slim with a tilted brim.
last question, last question for you is:
Mhm.
if you had one piece of advice for anybody, right? Like you mentioned 33 years on this planet. What is like one key golden nugget that you'd give to somebody, or regardless of where they are in life, and something that people could take away at the end of this episode?
Yeah. Like keep going, but trust yourself as you're going. Like, a lot of times like it seems like shit's not working out or, shit's not going like your way, right? But like understand that like your way is your oftentimes like very granular way of like looking at things. Like there's a much greater energy, there's a much greater perspective that is the world. And like just trust your journey and like stay on it, and more specifically like stay rooted in who you are. Like everyone has a unique journey, everyone has a unique narrative. Like shout out to the podcast. But like trust that, and know that like that quite literally is your product like for the world. And when you obviously find a way to share it, and furthermore like monetize it, like that's when I feel like you've won, or like you're successful, or not even monetize it but like be successful at that thing. That's when I feel like you've won per se. But it doesn't mean fame and accolades and mansion and a Ferrari. Like sometimes it's just being able to spend time with your family when you want to, and build a business, or like do whatever your thing is. So yeah, trust yourself, but just always keep going, like always.
That's awesome. Thank you for joining us, Jeremy, on episode 35 of An Untold Narrative.